listeners, I see Michael already smiling. He anticipates what I will say. My good friend.
And I put my head on a block, and I offer Mr. Brother Bishop the scalpel to cut it off.
The political leader has said several times up to last night that is not a reflection of her personal views or the views of the party. And you understand, George, how elections at the party level works.
Dr. Pierre, do you have ties? Do you have ties to the National Democratic Congress, Dr. Pierre? Or rather, were you commissioned by the NDC to do this poll?
Information because it seems interesting that a lot of your advice is very consistent with what was said. Brilliant.
And good luck with everything.
You too, man. May the best candidate win in the town of St. George.
But kill on.
Yes.
You is a tongue man too, so stop at that. Tell everybody you are a tongue man too.
We are a people who have always aspired for more. Who've always aspired to do better. Who've always accepted that not because your mother didn't go to secondary school, you should go. It has always been the other way around. You should aspire.
You've been there for a long time. Want to be queen of St. Andrews, but yet the problems around you you're not seeing. You can pray yourself out of the problems in St. Andrews.
Some persons were getting pension after 2 terms in office, right? And the persons that work for 26 years plus not getting anything. It's just unfair.
God is good, and God looks after me. You know, not just my wife is no longer here, so both herself and the father up there are looking after me very, very well indeed.
Not a few people that you pick up by the side of the road to run in an election. These are not people that you mustered up and you pulled together a few months before you think an election is going to call, and you say we want to win an election, so let's come together.
We seek the truth.
Would you be handing your resignation to the Minister of Culture tomorrow, sir?
No, I will not.
The leader of the opposition, we have accused your government, sir, of using the Grenada Development Bank to facilitate the financing of personal loans for certain government ministers.
The other side is in no position to talk about those issues, and I will leave it there.
We discover new perspectives.
You know his leadership style, and so many are saying, why are you coming now to talk about those issues?
Now is the time to speak. You have the right to decide who will take over.
And you met with Dr. Mitchell, and perhaps you might want to confirm what that meeting was about in your response. But
Dr. Mitchell, like myself, are Grenadians.
We ask the right questions.
Why was there no report on the work done of the commission? And how is this new committee different from the commission that was initially established back in 2022? So who are these elements that are using you?
I'm disappointed in my political leader.
And why is that animating those political conversations now?
This is a very interesting question.
The Bubb Reports with Dr. Emmalin Bubb. Thought-provoking, truthful, unbiased, and truly original reporting.
Hello, everyone, and happy Sunday to all of you, and welcome to yet another edition of the Bubb Report. I am your humble host, Dr. Emmalin Bubb. We're happy that you can spend some of your Sunday with us. And of course, if you're joining us live, please remember to like and share this week's live stream. For those of you over on our YouTube page, please remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube page. And those of you on Facebook, please remember to share this program so that others can get an opportunity to tune in to this very important program that we have today. Of course, every Sunday is important for us here on the Bubb Report. Now, before we get into this week's editorial, of course, for those of us who reside in the Washington, D.C., Maryland area, and I'm sure many are probably checked out of elections. Some of you are probably turned off or have other feelings about the last elections that was held in November. Of course, one of the consequences of the elections that was held in November in the context of the state of Maryland was that the county executive, that is former county executive County Executive Also Brooks, is no longer in that role, and she's now serving in the United States Senate, representing the state of Maryland. Of course, running to fill her seat is the current state attorney for the county of Prince George's, is Aisha Braveboy. Of course, Aisha Braveboy is the Prince George's County State's Attorney, the current state's attorney, but she is running in a special election that is being held on the 4th of March, to fill the role of county executive. Of course, we intend to have her here on the Bubb Report. But why am I mentioning County Executive Braveboy? Of course, County Executive Braveboy does have Grenadian heritage. She has Grenadian roots. I believe her dad, Mr. Cuthbert Braveboy, is Grenadian. I'm subject to correction. I am not sure that her mom is Grenadian, but I believe her dad is Grenadian. And of course, she intends to replace county executive, the role of the county executive. And elections do matter, folks. So we have seen the outcome of the last election and the consequences and the impact of that election on American and, of course, on Caribbean society as well. So please bear that in mind for those of you viewers who watch the Bubb Report here in Prince George's County. That special election will be held on the 4th of March, that is. And we intend to have the state's attorney here to discuss her programmatic platform, because I believe all elections obviously start at the local level, because that's where very important decisions are made. But of course, let us get into this week's editorial. And now, while some Caribbean citizens and politicians, they reacted with glee at the slew of the executive orders that the new American president signed into law last week, what they failed to take into account was the impact that some of these actions will have on Grenada and the region. Now, the reality is that while the new White House occupant may stick it to the people that some of you equally dislike, eventually the chickens will come home to roost, folks. I'm reminded in this era of the poem First They Came, which was a 1946 post-war confessional prose by the German Lutheran pastor Martin Niemöller. In that poem, Niemöller chided the silent complicity of German intellectuals and clergy following the Nazis' rise to power and subsequent incremental purging of their chosen enemies. Now, in essence, he made the point that eventually the oppressor will also oppress those who least expect to be oppressed. And without fail, the incoming American president's decision to withdraw from the World Health Organization and freeze U.S. aid funding are clear examples of ways in which the executive orders will eventually come to haunt those who are either apathetic or happy with his judgment calls against certain groups. Now, for example, the new administration's decision to cut WHO funding represents a potential disaster for global public health. This move will have far-reaching consequences. It will disrupt efforts to combat infectious diseases. It will disrupt efforts to address health inequities and ensure pandemic preparedness. Now, with its fragile health systems and reliance on international support, the Caribbean is particularly at risk. Now, established on April 7, 1948, under the United Nations, the WHO has been instrumental in addressing global health challenges. It coordinates efforts to combat infectious diseases, improve disease surveillance, facilitate vaccine distribution, and ensure universal health coverage. Now, with an annual budget of just over $3 billion US, the WHO relies heavily on its largest single contributor, which has historically been the United States, which accounts for 15 to 20% of its funding. Now, these contributions sustain critical health programs such as polio eradication, pandemic preparedness, and the fight against tuberculosis and HIV and AIDS. Now, a U.S. withdrawal will create a significant financial vacuum, leaving many of these programs vulnerable to collapse. The Caribbean region, which is characterized by small economies and fragile health systems, is particularly vulnerable to the loss of American funding to the WHO. The region relies on the WHO support for strengthening already weak healthcare infrastructure, combating diseases, and accessing technical expertise. This decision could also have severe repercussions on primary healthcare as well. Now, not wanting to outdo himself, the White House occupant also ordered a sweeping freeze on new funding for almost all USAID foreign assistance, that is, making exceptions for emergency food programs and military assistance to, you guessed it, Israel. Now, the order threatened a quick halt to many of the billions of dollars in US-funded projects globally to support health, education, development, job training, anti-corruption, security assistance, and other efforts. Now, by suspending foreign development assistance, the new regime in Washington is threatening the lives and futures of communities in crisis and abandoning at least one aspect of America's long-held bipartisan approach to foreign assistance, which support people based on need, regardless of politics. Now, folks, in the end, Caribbean leaders and people should never see American elections as far removed from impacting the Caribbean region. But heed the words of David Rudder, the great Trinbagonian Calypsonian, when he said, "They're trying to pass all laws to spoil our beauty, but in the end, we shall prevail. We must take a side or be lost in the rubble in a divided world that don't need islands no more. Are we doomed forever to be at somebody's mercy? Little keys can open up mighty doors." Rally. Of course, that was a verse from his very seminal rally around the West Indies, and that can be a metaphor for the Caribbean, and of course for what is happening now in the context of American politics, which will have far-reaching global consequences. Folks, this is the Bubb Report. We'll be right back for the first segment of the program with the Rotary Club of Grenada. Please stand by.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797. That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
And folks, welcome back to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. Now, the month of February is very special on the Rotary calendar because it includes the anniversary of the first meetings of Rotary that was held on February 23rd, 1905, now designated as the World Understanding and Peace Day. Now, in designating World Understanding Month, the Rotary International Board asks all Rotary clubs in the association to plan special programs for their weekly meetings and to undertake special activities to promote understanding and goodwill as essential for world peace. Now, in Grenada, February is also Rotary International World Understanding and Peace Month, and the Rotary Club of Grenada has its own activities planned that begins on the 1st of February 2025 aboard the cruise ship Free Winds. Now, here to talk about this activity is Rotarian Marielle Alexander, who is the Director of Public Image for the Rotary Club of Grenada. Ms. Alexander, welcome to the Bubb Report this week.
Thank you, and thank you for your warm welcome, and thanks for having us on the Bubb Report this morning. We're very honored.
Yes, absolutely. Now, first and foremost, let us talk about the rationale for Rotary's core mission of promoting peace and tolerance, which we need now more than ever.
Absolutely. So, I mean, Rotary International is a very service-based organization. And really our core values is focus around world understanding and peace. And as you mentioned, on February 23rd, 1905, this is when there was the first meeting of Rotary International. It then spread worldwide. So Grenada, for example, our Rotary Club of Grenada opened on August 23rd, 1968. And that would be by Dr. John Watts, whom you may know. And we've really tried to carry on that work throughout. Something that I heard you speak about a little earlier, you spoke about polio eradication. And that is actually something that is a big part of what the Rotary does as well. So really it's, our world understanding and peace is focused around supporting initiatives like those. It's also about supporting education and, scholarships and so on for people to get into the peace of the world, get involved. We also have the interactors, which are at PBC, Presentation Brothers College, and they actually attended the World UN Conference in Trinidad recently. And so we really are encouraging and fostering peace initiatives, not only amongst our members, but in the communities and the larger world.
Absolutely. And of course, we know that, the Rotary does, as you articulated, so much good work in Grenada. How are people still staying engaged with the Rotary? I know that, at least in the context of the United States and Grenadian, in the diaspora and Grenadian organizations, there are people who are not necessarily excited to get involved in community service. And we also live in this new era of social media where everybody now is on their devices. So how does the Rotary continue doing that good work by getting people involved?
So currently at the Rotary Club of Grenada, we have approximately between the two clubs, because we've got the St. George's Club and the East Club, and we have about 60 members in total. So we are very integrally involved in that. Some of the things that we do, our service projects throughout the year, I don't know if you're aware, but we actually support the Grenada School for Special Education. So it's something that we hold very dear to our hearts. And not only do we do, different events for them, we also are currently, we've had that grant approved and we are extending the school to be able to house and educate more children. So it's something that we're very passionate about. We also always try to do little things for them to make them feel special, like Christmas celebrations and gift giving and so on. One of our biggest assets is the quarantine point. I don't know if you've had the pleasure of attending.
I've heard about it in respect of the lights. Yeah, the lights show. Is that what it is?
Well, it really is year round. But yes, we just concluded the Christmas at the Point, which was about a month of activities and lights and so on. So the lights are sponsored by Monica Benoit in her memory. And it really is an amazing celebration. So it's not just about Christmas. It's about, the young people and adults alike having somewhere that they can go, they can sample local culinary delights. We also had a really special initiative this year because of the devastation of Carriacou and Petit Martinique by Hurricane Beryl. We had a little initiative where normally we would do a gift giving where Santa would come and give gifts to the young people, but somewhere outdoors. So it really is a wonderful venue for that. And again, that promotion of peace in our community.
Yeah, and you are so correct about that open green space. We don't have a lot of green spaces, especially in the south of the island or in St. George's, in the town of St. George. So what you're doing there at Quarantine Point, I think, is so amazing. I saw a lot of the pictures, friends, relatives visited, and they really had a great time. So you've come in for ringing endorsements there.
It was wonderful, and we want to say thank you to everyone who supported. It really is a time that we come alive when we see people really enjoying themselves. So it was amazing.
Yeah. Now let us talk about this year's activity. You're hosting a lecture and concert on the 1st of February, which of course, given that everything that's happening in the world around us today is so timely and relevant. So let us talk about the inspiration behind pairing a concert with a lecture.
So because, of course, we are supporting Rotary International with their World Peace and Understanding, which is February, that's the month for it. We decided to kick it off really on February 1st, as you said, aboard the Free Winds cruise ship. And it's going to be, Rotary International actually has been involved in peacekeeping as far back as World War II. So it really has been a real journey. Peace is a process. And Rotary International was actually one of the 42 organizations invited to serve as consultants to the US delegation to the United Nations Conference back in 1945. So we felt it was really in keeping to kick off this month with a peace lecture. And the musical concert, of course, is, the cherry on the pie, as they say. So we are going to have our event on February 1st aboard the Free Winds cruise ship, which is going to be docked at the Melville Street cruise ship terminal. And we would love for everyone to come out and support. We are going to have Dr. Wendy Grenada as our lecturer. And some of you may know Dr. Grenada. She is a professor at the St. George's University. She holds a PhD and MA in International Studies with a concentration in Comparative Politics and International Relations and an MA in Human Resource Management. Dr. Grenada actually worked with the government of Grenada for 20 years or so in the public service. So she's very well experienced, and she has authored quite a few pieces. One of them being Direct Democracy and Party Politics in the Commonwealth Caribbean. So she's very well experienced, and you see our topic for her lecture is Preserving the Caribbean as a Zone of Peace, Imperatives for Caribbean Foreign and Domestic Policy. So we feel it's going to be a very engaging and thought-provoking lecture, and very much in keeping with our theme for peacekeeping.
So yes, so people are going to come get their minds fed, but of course they can also shake a leg at that event too. So tell us about the concert aspect of it.
So the Free Winds cruise ship actually has a band on board, very well known. If you were to look it up, you're going to see some of their concerts, which have been very lively and just a wonderful variety of music. So you can, yes, that's going to be after the lecture, after you get the serious bit of it out, you can relax and enjoy the musical concert. It's not going to be a dinner event or drinks event as such, but it's going to be an event where you can really sit back, relax, enjoy the musical concert. And most importantly, your contribution really is going to be towards the Rotary Foundation, which is the funding that we would use to service our community projects that we would be, supporting throughout the year.
Yep, absolutely. And of course, where can, for price of admission, what does that look like, and where can patrons obtain tickets?
So the price of the tickets is 80 EC per person. You can get into...
That's very reasonable, actually. I think that's reasonable. It's more than a FET ticket these days.
You're right. These days to go to a FET, you're talking $200 US, right?
That's right.
But yes, a very reasonable price. You're going to be on board the Free Winds cruise ship, which is a lovely vessel. And you can obtain tickets from Rotarians. You can reach out to us via the number 473-404-1968. And you can also just get in touch with any Rotarians. I think most of us are very well known. You can also go to our social media pages. That's Facebook and Instagram, and you will find contact information there also. And yeah, we'd be more than delighted to have everyone join us on board.
What time does the event get underway? And of course, if we're talking about answer that question first, and then I have a follow-up.
Sure. So the event begins at 7:30 p.m. and it ends at about 9:45 p.m. However, boarding begins at 6:30 p.m. So you can come to the Melville Street Esplanade Mall. That's where boarding will be taking place. And the Ariza car park will be available for parking. Additionally, the regular car park at the Esplanade Mall.
Okay, good. So parking, I think you answered the second question, and that was concerning parking. Now, outside of that event on the 1st of February, what other events are you having in the month of February?
So at least once every week, the Rotary Club of Grenada meets, and we do have different things planned for the month. Watch that space. It's going to be announced on our social media platforms. So I don't want to quite let it out just yet, but we are coming out with that information. So you will see it soon.
Very well, very well. Is there anything else you wish to add that we did not talk about?
Definitely. To let you know that tickets are on sale as well at the actual boarding venue. So we will have Rotarians present. So if you don't manage to get your hands on a ticket before the occasion, we will be available to sell tickets at the event itself. Just wanted to touch quickly, if I can, just on a few of the other initiatives that the funding will be supporting. Every year, and this year it will be in the month of May, we have what we call the VOSH project, and that is essential eye care. So we have a team of eye care professionals coming in from the US, and we provide free eye care for over 1,000 people on the island. And it's held both in St. George's and in St. Andrews. And it's a full team of professionals. So it's not just getting your eyes checked. You will be provided with glasses, prescription glasses, medication if needed, and so on. And for anything that can't be produced on the spot, then they are produced and sent back into Grenada. We also have several wash projects on the island. So we install water, sanitation, and health facilities in several schools on the island. One thing that we are still working with, it's an ongoing project, but we have actually repaired the Top Hill Senior Citizens Home in Carriacou. So a lot of the funding is going towards that as well, being able to have the residents of the Top Hill Senior Home go back into the comfort of their home after Hurricane Beryl. We also have the solar systems installed at Int'l. We support with that, and at the Dorothy Hopkins Home. So additional to that, we do quite a many projects, and we really appreciate the support of the public in all our initiatives for fundraising.
Absolutely. That is very important work. Rotary does very, very good work. Yeoman service, you all are unsung heroes. And of course, being a part of being part of civil society, I think it's important that we have those type of partners on board. Is there anything else that you wish to add before we go to the next segment?
That's it. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. And thank you to the listeners for giving us an air. And we look forward to having you celebrate with us on February 1st on board the Free Winds cruise ship.
Absolutely. Viewers and listeners, that was Mariel Alexander, who is the Director of Public Image for the Rotary Club of Grenada. Thank you for joining us today. Of course, folks, do stand by. Of course, for this airing this episode of the Bubb Report, we were also joined by the newly minted political leader of the New National Party. That is the Honorable Emmalin Pierre, Member of Parliament also for the St. Andrew Southeast constituency. I wish to caveat what I'm about to say by making the point that the interview was not live. It was not live because Mrs. Pierre is in church at the moment, and she found it difficult to sit with us for a live interview at the time that the program is aired live. So we actually recorded that conversation earlier, and we will play that conversation after the second segment of the program, which we are about to have. So please stand by for that very important conversation. I would conclude that it was also a very eye-opening conversation in respect to some of the activities that are occurring in the new National Party, with Mrs. Pierre being at the helm of the party now. And of course, we had a wide-ranging conversation on a number of issues, animating concerns in her party, including the recent resignation, of course, of her former colleague in the NNP, Mr. Peter David. And again, we are watching the space to see what Mr. David is going to be doing with respect to his political future. So please stand by for that conversation. And folks, we're going to come up for air and come back for the second segment of the program. Please stand by. Hi, everyone. Thanks for checking out the Bubb Report's social media pages. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch our weekly live show, follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch repeat episodes on Wednesdays at 4 and 5 p.m. respectively on CRFM Radio and GBN TV in Grenada. We are also viewed on Sundays at 8 p.m. on WPG 10 throughout the Caribbean. Thanks for watching.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797. That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
We
be seated.
Bishop's College, Hillsborough Secondary, GBSS.
He has left him in the dust. SAS has gone. SAS is gone. GBSS is chasing. SAS is gone. GBSS is chasing. SAS is gone. As we enter the home, this is SAS. But here comes GBSS.
This is the most exciting race I've ever seen in all my years of intercourse. In school and out of school. Intercourse Grenada.
Well.
And viewers and listeners, of course, that was a bit of a reminiscing with the Grenada Boys Secondary School. Of course, we cannot talk about the Grenada Boys Secondary School without talking about their mini Olympics and, of course, their athletic prowess. And, of course, their history, of course, with Mr. Ashby and other great educators. Now, in 2025, the institution is celebrating its 140th year of existence. Now, for a century and 4 decades, this institution has left an indelible mark on the minds and futures of successive generations of men and women in its quest to provide a sound and quality education to the nation's youth. Now, one cannot talk about GBSS without acknowledging both its academic and athletic prowess. In fact, the GBSS is home to Grenada's history-making Olympians, Dr. Karani James and Linda Victor, Dr. Francis Alexis, Peter David, Ruggles Ferguson, Dr. Randall Terry Christopher, Dr. Leo Edwards, the late Herbert Blaze and Sir Nicholas Brathwaite, Junior Murray, Sir Paul Schoon and Leo de Gale, and of course, current principal, Mr. Kenny James. Now, here to discuss the GBSS are Mr. Kenny James and Mr. Kelvis Joseph, who I believe is the head of the mathematics department at the Grenada Boys Secondary School. Gentlemen, welcome to this week's edition of the Bubb Report. I suspect that you were nostalgic, very, very nostalgic with respect to what we just featured here in the lead up to this segment.
Good morning, Brother Joe.
Both of you.
All right.
Good morning to all our viewers. I sat here and just smiled because I'm listening to you after. For a moment, I said, you know, all we need to do now is just share what's happening for this anniversary and close this program off.
Correct. Mr. Joseph, sir, welcome to the program.
All right, welcome, and it's nice to be here. We bring you warmest greetings, as we always say, with greatness from all GBSS family to you, Doc, and your viewing audience. We are extremely happy to join you on your program this morning.
Yes, of course. I will do a quick round of icebreakers before we get into it. Favorite GBSS memory while you were there? Now you're back there as educators, so I suspect you're seeing yourselves, your past selves in the current students. But favorite GBSS memory? Mr. Joseph, let's start with you, sir.
Right, so it's with Mr. Ashby on the Monday morning, how he would describe the suckers. I can remember quite clearly some boys that tried to evade his presence, and at the fence by the college area, they tried to, dodge him, and he brought it to our attention, and he said, boys like frogs diving, through the fence, and those things really would put laughter on our faces, and it's those kind of anecdotes, that would really leave in our memory from Mr. Ashby.
Brother James.
I have two. The first one is, normally when Mr. Ashby left the admin block to make his round around the school, any of the boys seeing him coming down the step, you would hear chip, 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 chip. And once you hear chip, 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 you know, the chief is coming. But somehow he came down the block, came across to the Form 4 without us seeing him. And one of the boys looked out, saw him, and usual sound, chief, chief, chief. He entered the form. He said, who is chief? Is there an Indian tribe here? That is one. And the second is my guy who was always talkative. I was in the library. Mr. Ashby's office used to be down to the end of the block. So the library on one end and his office in the other. And he walked into the office. There's too much noise in here. Old man James, I know it's you. And I was stunned because at that point, I never knew Mr. Ashby actually knew my name, but to call me by name and to say it is me, I said, okay, I have to behave myself. So those are my two outstanding memories, being in school at the GBSS.
Of course, you know, we cannot talk about the GBSS without talking about Mr. Ashby. And incidentally, both of you brought up memories that involved Mr. Victor Ashby. I think really and truly, he is a legend. He's an educational legend, and he is has such an impact on thousands of young men in Grenada. So as you celebrate 140 years, how does Mr. Ashby, Victor Ashby, factor into your celebrations?
I would say that there's an event plan for Mr. Ashby to honor Mr. Ashby that would crown the celebrations. Now, the theme for the celebration is 140 years of legacy, honoring the past, embracing the present, inspiring the future. And as we look back, we have to pay cognizance to the fact that Mr. Ashby has been the longest serving principal of the GBSS for 27 years. The GBSS got to a point where it was known for having principals for a year, 2 years, and then they would move on. So when we think about that era there, late 70s, Val Francis, George Maguire, and so on. When you look at that era there, you recognize that the transitions were pretty quick. So Mr. Ashby coming in 1980, during that revolutionary period, brought some sort of a stability to the leadership of the institution and went through for 27 years. So most of us, the younger old boys and old girls, because one cannot lose sight of the fact that the GBSS had girls. It was part of the revolutionary experiment. The last grouping of girls left in 1992. They were part of my graduating class, right? So that too, he took us through all of that. So if you talk to any GBSS boy of that era, 1980, come up 2007, there's always something that you could remember, some impact that Mr. Victor Ashby had on you. And so boys have been reaching out to us and saying, listen, we need to do something for the chief. We need to make sure something happens. And we want to do that while he's alive, while he's well, so that he could enjoy his flowers. So we have planned a gala. These days is gala. Plan a nice gala.
Gala. Fet. In Dr. Mitchell's words, Dr. Keith Mitchell's words. That's what he said. Yes, go ahead.
So that gala is carded for the 2nd of August. The date may change depending, because one of the things we're trying to do in this celebration is to ensure that we cater for our old boys and old girls who may be in the diaspora. So when they come home, maybe for Carnival, or they're planning their summer vacation, they could plan to be part of this event, right? So we're still working through the dynamics of cost, and well, we have a tentative venue in the Grenada Trade Center, but we're working through all of that. So as we get closer, more details will come as to where we are with that. But this event is the creme de la creme to salute the legacy of and contribution of Mr. Ashby, not just to the GBSS, but Mr. Ashby was, you could say to some extent, principal of Grenada, as one gentleman puts it. Because if you are a PBC boy, a Happy Hill girl, and Mr. Ashby met you in town and you are out of order, he would call you to order. And
this
bet
is
your
true.
bottom dollar, before you reach to your school, your principal will be made aware that, listen, Kenny was given trouble in town, I spoke with him. He was that kind of person. I mean, agriculture. Today he's involved in pan, cricket. Mr. Ashby has been involved in almost everything nation building in Grenada.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, he's
we've been
certainly
saying that he should be Sir Victor.
I would agree with that. I would endorse that sentiment. Absolutely. Mr. Joseph, current students, I think, and I look at it in the context of other schools in Grenada as well. In my day, school spirit was a big thing. How are we getting, especially in this era of social media use, where kids are not as outdoors as much as they were, at least during my time, because in my time we did not have, any of us gentlemen here did not have the creature comforts that these kids have these days. But school spirit, at least in my observation, I don't see the kids making a big deal of school spirit these days, or perhaps my observations were only anecdotal. How are you ensuring that in your 140th year, that school spirit will be a big part of what you're doing, especially for the current students?
All right, so several things are planned, and of course, it's a work in progress. One of the events we have is this Friday, whereby we're going to invite an old boy for each of the forms, all right, to come in and engage our boys, this current student body, to give them the experience, while traversing the time at the GBSS, and also to hear from them. And it's a case where the old would meet the present. And we hope by so doing, this can arouse, stimulate that sort of GBSS pride. All right. But yes, we're going against certain distractions, but I think we on the right path. In recent times, we'd have seen boys would make certain comments when we would say certain things of a certain school. They would applaud in, of course, GBSS favor. So we are seeing somewhat of a new vibe, all right? Somewhat of a buzz in this direction. So we're monitoring it. It will take a long time, but I think, we'll get there by the passage of time. And truth be told, we're going to take the city by storm, all right? Come March. Right, that is on the 14th of March 2025. I saw, in recent times there was a march from our convent school there, but for GBSS it would be something you have never seen. All right, and it is entitled GBSS in the city. We're looking to assemble right in front of the Emmalin Mall from 4 p.m. And it will be a feeling of reflection for us, reminiscence, because truth be told, a bit of history, Tantin was not the first location for this great school, all right? In fact, the very first location was where we have the first Caribbean International Bank currently located, all right? And then it moved to Melville Street. And of course, in 1946, it moved over to Tantin. So really and truly, GBSS has its roots in the tongue of St. George, right there in the heart. So that is where, we're going to assemble and let people know that GBS is alive. And regardless as to what is being said, there are good things happening there. And we're going to showcase, all the different aspects of our school, all of the positives, and, to really get back in the minds of society that this, is a school that would go towards nation building. and we have, Grenada interests at heart. So we're asking the entire public to come out and be a part. And if you have a negative perception about GBSS, on that day, you will reconsider and you might be converted as well.
And you might be converted as well. Mr. James, yes,
just
sir.
To add to that, Dr. Bubb, one of the hallmarks of this event also will be a march from the Green Bridge area coming down Melville Street. Our cadets, teachers, students, scouts, drum corps, and I mean, we have the best in the Caribbean when it comes to drumming, right? There'll be that procession coming down Melville Street from the Green Bridge area with whether it would be a slow march or eyes left and eyes right. I say eyes left because we would have all the principals who are alive. We want to have them standing in that area close to the barracks where Dimension would practice there, because that was the schoolhouse, the grammar schoolhouse. So we want to have them standing there. So we may do our eyes left there on a slow march. And then when you get to the old NIS building, where we pass in that area there, that used to be the hostel. So that too is part of the GBSS history. So there'll be something to mark that as we process down Melville Street into that area in front of the mall for that big celebration, bringing together our boys. I mean, hey, Dash, the boss
Gifted,
is a GBSS boy.
Gifted. Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
I mean, that's why he's so gifted, Is the GBSS nest in Dash, that quest for excellence. So he would be there, and along with many of our other artists, not just in singing, but across the spectrum in terms of theater arts and so on. The GBSS has it. We have it locked. And so there'll be a wonderful showcase of GBSS in the city on that day. And that's a big event that the entire public, all of Grenada, could come out and be part of.
Absolutely. Of course, we're going into February, and of course, the school, in fact, was established in February, I believe. So are there plans for on that specific day to have any activities? What does that look like?
Well,
Mr. Joseph?
Right, so for Sunday, we have a church service at the People's Church over there in St. Paul, whereby our presence will be felt in a very profound way. And we're asking all the GBSS boys to be a part, of course, to be attired in our different regalia. Of course, the well-known GBSS tie. And we'll also participate in the church service. And thereafter, about 11, we go for a brunch down there at Secret Harbor as we enjoy a softer moment. And the public can also engage us as well. And on Monday, we have a special auditorium program, all right, for the current GBSS body, whereby we have our guest speaker, Mr. Andy, who will be addressing our audience. Of course, he's an old boy, so it's a whole series of events. And
that is Minister Andy Williams, correct?
That's correct.
That's okay. Correct. Yeah. Yes.
So those are the ones upcoming in recent times, and then we'll take it from there.
Absolutely. Now, how can old boys get involved? I suspect that there is an old boys association. I did see that you also held a press conference to launch these series of activities. But for old boys, for example, in the diaspora, those that I met, a lot of folks. I meet a lot of folks here in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area who are past students of the GBSS. How can they get involved?
Of course, with their contributions, we need money to do things at the GBSS. We have boys that we help out with a hot meal on a daily basis. These days, the meal is no longer $1. We used to have a $1 roti provided by Ms. Gemma at the GBSS. So a boy could go to school with $1, $1.50, because the sandwiches were 50 cents. So boys from St. Paul's were known for spending their bus money. And we go to the bottom of the lane and look for a ride to come home, right? These days, it's more expensive. The minimum cost for a lunch is $5, right? And we support some of our boys in this regard. So our old boys could contribute to that. Some of the activities that we're doing, for example, we have a focus on health, men's health, which will be on the 4th, the evening of the 4th, at the auditorium. Our intention is to bring that live, have that streamed on our Facebook page, that those outside of Grenada, that they could join with us in that. On the afternoon of the 3rd, so that's a Monday. So as Mr. Joseph mentioned, the boys will have their celebration in the morning, that massive assembly. And of course, old girls and old boys are invited to join us for assembly on Monday the 3rd. On the evening, we are going to have a nice sit down to talk GBSS. We are going to have Mr. Gordon de la Motte. He's one of our accomplished authors and artists in Grenada, who is one of those who is still alive, who has transitioned with the GBSS from Melville Street to Tantine. So we want to sit with him to gather that kind of information. What was it like then, the GBSS then? Also, we are going to invite Mrs. Glenda Mason Francis. Of course, the high school girls say, that's our principal. Well, hey, before she became your principal, she was a teacher at the GBSS, and one that we hold dearly because she still contributes to the life of the GBSS. She's one of those persons I could call on anytime if I have anything hot in my head, right? So she's very much ingrained in the fabric of the GBSS. So we want these two marvelous people to be interviewed by Pastor Worm, Pastor Stevenson Worm. And why? It's because Pastor Stevenson Worm is the author of this book on the history of the GBSS. And a new edition will be coming out shortly. We're going through it to make sure, everything is there. So having documented the history, we want him to sit in the auditorium with these two beautiful people and conduct that interview. And of course, it's our intention to again bring that live, that we could have a question and answer segment. Again, our old boys and girls in the diaspora getting involved in that. The locals, we want you to come. Not because it's streamed live, you're going to sit at home, or you're tired, you're going home. Come join us. We had a wonderful old boys, old girls meeting last week, right? We left there sometime after 7. We had over 50 something old boys and old girls who came. We sat, we discussed GBSS, discussed how they can contribute to the celebration, discuss how we're going to come together as a local alumni body. Because currently we have alumni all over. There's some guys in England. There's a chapter in Canada, in Toronto. There's a chapter that operates mostly out of America and other parts of the world. Guys like Dr. Nurse, who's out in
Germany,
Europe.
I believe. Yeah, Raymond
Yes.
Nurse.
Raymond Nurse, right? Very much involved in the Alumni International Federation. So, and they're working, as a matter of fact, this grouping is facilitating boys this year attending the pen relays representing the GBSS in April. So they're working, but there needs to be that local chapter. Those of us who are here who would really come together and take things forward on the ground. And so that was a wonderful meeting where they were involved. So we would do, as we go through, whatever we can do to incorporate those who are outside, we would. But as I said, that event for Mr. Ashby, where we have the younger old boys of that era, we expect that as they plan their vacation, that they would plan around that so that they could be here. So nobody could say, well, I didn't know, nobody told me, so I couldn't plan for it.
But,
If you hear,
even though nobody tells them, I believe it's incumbent upon them to reach out as well and say, this is how I'm going to help. How can I get involved?
definitely. And we always monitoring our Facebook page, so they can reach out to us. Most of our boys are in a WhatsApp group for the year, so you could reach out and get that information onto us, and things will roll, things will happen. This is the GBSS. We're ready.
Absolutely. Mr. Joseph, is there anything else you wish to add, sir?
Well, in addition to the events, we have in July, a $1 drive. All right, I guess so much a fundraiser whereby old boys coming back from the diaspora would come to have a tour of the compound, right? The campus, as we call it. Because in recent times, our compound has evolved tremendous in terms of infrastructure. For them, they know about the 3 barracks, all right, Form 3, Form 4, Form 5. But we all now have wall buildings, and they may not even be able to recognize some of it. So that would be a good time for them to come and see the transformation that took place, infrastructure-wise. And we are looking to even expand. We add to our curriculum. Now the boys involved in food and nutrition, which was not offered in my time. So they get a wide variety of different exposure in terms of our curriculum. So we are growing, and we'll keep moving and going on to even greater things.
And of course, we know that, in the country, we cannot talk about Grenadian history without talking about the history of that GBSS building. Of course, I believe it was in the 90s, or it might have been in the early 2000s, that great GBSS fire that occurred, that destroyed a lot of your trophies and things like that. I believe, I suspect the principal's office was destroyed as well. But those wooden buildings... 93, that was in the 90s. There we go.
That's when that block with the admin block went up in flames. With a lot of the history and so on. I mean, fortunately for us, Kellon, in the GBSS family, we have some, I call them walking Googles. So there are some former teachers that you could call on. If you're not sure on something, you could call on them. At the top of that list is Miss Antia Lord, who retired last year. I mean, anything GBSS from 1980 come up, you could ask her, and she'll remember. You have Miss Hercules. You have Mrs. Henry Greenwich. You have Mrs. Vira McQueen, right? And the list goes on. Mrs. Mason Francis. So there are a number of old teachers out there who have information and are always willing to share at any point. One of the things that I cherish as the current principal of the GBSS is the fact that I could reach out to Mr. Ashby, I could reach out to Mr. Thomas, I could reach out to Miss Batiste or Miss Mason, because they are part of that GBSS fabric. Remember, H.D. Batiste, Daddy Bakes, as the boys then call him, the first Grenadian headmaster, was the father of Miss Madeleine Batiste, former principal of the Anglican High School. So, people would say, for example, well, SAS really should be the sister school of the Anglican High School. But they gravitate to the GBSS, and that's because we have a long history together. And so this is why we celebrate things together as the Tantine Bullets.
As the Tantine Bullets, absolutely. Very important conversation. Of course, we know that Hurricane Ivan also impacted a lot of schools, but especially the GBSS as well. And of course, we cannot talk. And finally, you have some heavy hitters in Grenadian society. As I said in the intro, you have the great Dr. Kirani James, who made history both for, and Lyndon Victor, not only for Grenada, but for the GBSS. I'm sure that that's a point of pride. But let us talk about legacy building into the future and what you hope this series of activities that you're having this year would mean for the future of the institution. I know, for example, that you've also gotten parents involved in a lot of the activities that you're having, which I thought was very commendable, not only at the PTA level, but expanding how parents can be involved in the life of the school. So let us talk about that. That's Mr. Joseph. I'll start with you, sir.
Right. So if we pay attention to the type of activities that are planned, they are very much all inclusive. All right, from the very old boys to not so old, to those my age, and current ones, and even those coming. Right. I can speak of the event in St. George, GBSS in St. George's. It will be aired, so those in primary school, they would aspire to be a future student at this great institution. When they see some of the things we showcase and what we offer, it will be a means of encouragement for them to be part of our institution in the future. And as we interact with them, all right, our current student, we try over and over to ensure that we instill and inculcate our values, our mission statement, and what we stand for as a school, our philosophy. And we guard against, those obstacles we have, societal problems and those things. We put measures in place to ensure that we guard them from that and let them know that as long as they're part of the GBSS, they are part of something very great, something very special. And as long as they align themselves with our philosophy, we can get the best out of them. So the activities is to, rebrand us in some ways and reshape our thinking as we involve all hands on deck, right, to come forward and make a meaningful contribution to society. We also have some soft moments, all right? There is a cruise which should take place April the 12th, 2025.
April the 12th.
Right. So perchance somebody's outside the old boy or anyone loving GBSS can come. You can still send a donation because, as our principals say, we're very much in need of the finances because of some of the programs we want to implement at the school. So we involve everybody because, as I said, the GBSS welcomes all, and you need to be properly taken care of. So it is against this backdrop we are planning all these activities, to really give the school a strong and solid foundation as we forge forward into the future.
Mr. James.
And just to add to that in terms of old meeting new and transitioning, there's the after work line. We had one last year, and we're going to have another one on the 30th of May this year. And part of the objective of the after work line is to bring all old boys and old girls together. Now, at the meeting we had last week, we had two men from the 60s, 1966. But we know we have older than that. And so it's always a good opportunity to bring everybody together that we could share ideas, we could find out from them what their time in the school was like, maybe something that we've lost that we need to bring back. Now, in terms of the legacy, you would note when school began this year, if you follow our Facebook page, Dr. Kirani James was there, Lyndon Victor was there. And from time to time, you would see GBSS boys who are out there doing well, being invited to school to engage the boys. We are in a society where positive influences are not highlighted much these days. You look at the news and the first thing is who went to court, who went to what. We need to provide our boys with an atmosphere, an environment that says to them there is something different. We need to provide them with that opportunity to recognize that, listen, even if I'm coming from a working class parentage, even if I'm coming from nothing, I can make something of myself as a student of the GBSS. And I always say to the boys, non palma sine labore, no reward without labor. Don't expect anybody to give you handouts. Work for what you want. And these are important nuggets that we have to keep sharing with our boys and bringing in these influential people who they know, who they see. They may not know that they were GBSS boys or girls, but at least when you come to the Great Hall of the GBSS, when we invite them back and they're able to address the auditorium, they're able to address the boys, they're able to share their experiences and their journey to success as an adult and the role that the GBSS played in their formation. We believe that this is going to help the younger generation to develop that sense of identity, to develop that level of resilience, to develop what we call the GBSS-ness, to understand, as I always say to them, you're not just part of an ordinary school. You're a part of a great institution, the institution where Sir Dwight Venner came from, Timothy Antoine, right? Sir Sidney Gunn Monroe, who was a governor of St. Vincent. We have another governor who came to the GBSS and offered governorship in Antigua, right? And so the history of the school is rich. Is rich. This is the only place, Kellon, and this is one of the things we have to remember. The GBSS is the only place you would find 768 males on any one day. Now, if we could impact these boys in a positive manner, then we could say the future of Grenada is going to look bright. Most of the other people, with the exception of PBC, may have a co-ed situation or the girls. But at the GBSS, testosterone, 768, we have to manage that every day. And so this building of legacy, we take seriously. And I've been saying to our old boys, it's not just about us in the school. When last did you stop and talk to a young man you saw with a GBSS tie, knowing that you're an old boy? He may not have been engaged in something that you like, but there are ways of engaging them to say, hey, brother, remember, I'm a GBSS boy too, what's going on here? This is not what we stand for.
Yeah.
And this is important because I always say to my boys, I have eyes out there, and my eyes out there is the old boys and old girls. And so we must have old boys and old girls taking up that responsibility of mentoring, of just simply talking and encouraging our present students that they know somebody is looking at me, somebody is going to hold me accountable. And I must do this well. I must be an ambassador of my school. It's very important because all over the world, you will find a GBSS boy or girl.
Absolutely. Now let us get to, yes, Mr. Joseph, you wanted to add something? Yes, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, well, for me, knowing what GBSS did for me, right, I cannot just, stand idle by and do not try to pass on this legacy as our principal, which is very rich, has been alluding to ever so often during our discussion here. And I was pretty much very blessed that all my life I've been associated with the GBSS. All right. When I applied for the job, I got calls from other schools, but Mr. Ashby always have a soft heart for his boys. And that was the first option that was laid on the table for me. So I am indebted to GBSS. All right. And I have a great passion to see each of the young men, all right, go forward, advance themselves as men making contribution to nation building. And that is what we all about. enriching these young men's lives.
Absolutely. Now, what we will do is to get to some viewer comments. I see Margaret Francis here is saying, hello, Margaret. Of course, Margaret is a fan of the Bubb Report, but she's also a past student of the Anglican High School. That's your sister school there. Margaret is saying, Daddy Bakes was also principal of AHS and one of the best English teachers in Grenada. So, Margaret, I guess I can appreciate why you were such a stickler for grammar. Now I understand. Okay, we have Daddy Bakes to blame for that. Let us go on to some other comments. Michael Stephen, I suspect, who is a past student of the GBS. Of course, those of you watching and who are past students of the GBSS, just please leave a comment for us here on the Bubb Report. He's saying, Mr. Stephen is saying, continue on your quest to make GBSS great again, Mr. James. Of course, being a principal in these times, I suspect is very, very tough. I just can't imagine.
It is.
I tip my hat to off to you, gentlemen, having to manage such a huge, perhaps the largest student population in Grenada. Really, if you think about it, is the largest institution. Then we have another comment. Ms. Vara McQueen is the only teacher who had the honor of teaching me in primary and secondary school, my adopted mother. So says Mr. Brian Phillip. There we go. Somebody else is saying, Ms. Taryn Grenada is saying, excellent point, Mr. James. Your inclusion will indeed impact the GBSS boys and by extension, the GBSS. Man of steel, not of straw, I suspect.
Yeah.
Or men of steel, if you think about it.
Men of steel.
Yes. Hannah Forsyth is saying, Mr. Ashby is a true legend. I have the utmost respect for him. Mr. James, we appreciate you too. I was skeptical about my son attending GBSS a year ago, but from the time I heard you were hired as principal, I was extremely happy. I felt a lot more comfortable. You have been through the school system and you understand the culture there. We can see the positive impact you have made. The boys respect you, and the fights, etc., in the school have now been on a low. We see your work and we appreciate it. So there you go, staff. You're getting a good compliment there from Miss Hannah Denise Forsyth. Miss Ronnie Slinger, Mr. Slinger is saying, 4 of my brothers went to the GBSS. Mr. Slinger, where did you go to school, sir? Love to hear that. Mr. Franklin is saying, I'm not hearing about the girls who attended GBS, but I think Mr. James did address that. I'm curious, though. He's saying, I'm curious as to what was the reason that girls attended GBSS at the time. I think, Mr. James, you touched on that, but can you expand on that a bit?
It was part of the, I call it part of the revolutionary experience, because it happened during the revolution when more opportunities were made available for secondary education for Grenadian young people. And so through that, the girls, as GBSS girls from 1 to Form 5, because we also have to remember in the history, the Form 6, where you had girls and some boys and girls who came from other schools to come to the GBSS. Now, this was before, for the younger people, this was before you had IFE, Institute for Further Education, and GTVI, Grenada Technical and Vocational
Institute, yeah.
Right, which came together as Grenada National College, and today we know as the T.A. Marisho Community College. So there's that part of the history too of GBSS assisting the IFE in terms of labs and so on for sciences and all of that, right? So it's a great history that to talk about the history alone is a program on itself for itself.
And I will be sharing some history in ways in which GBSS students defied the revolution that occurred. That was on October 14th, I believe that was in 1981. No, 1979. I will be sharing that, GBSS Revolutionary History, as we end the program. There is one comment here, and perhaps, Mr. Joseph, you can address this. The viewer is saying, can you request the police to be present after school to avoid fighting? I was passing on Friday at the roundabout, and there was a fight with GBS's boy. I had to call the police.
Right. So, as we
I
said,
guess this is off the compound. I want to be clear.
that
This
is
did not
correct.
happen on the compound.
Yeah,
Yes.
you're correct. So, what we are facing in terms of the students that come to us, it's much more than what is exposed to them in the school. All right. It's more of a societal issue, them coming from certain communities where the influence not in the best interest. All right. So we try to manage our stuff as much as possible on the compound, show them, the right reason why they're here. All right. But sometimes the influence so great when they exit the compound, they might meet up with other friends in the neighborhoods. And that is where things might get out of control. So it is very much where it is brought to them. It has been brought to the police attention. I think they're aware of it. And yes, more supervision can be given out in this area to assist, what to do on the compound itself. But it is a societal issue, and it's something that we as a school addressing, but a police presence, I think, would be an additional help in this regard.
Absolutely. Ms. Principal James, is there anything else you wish to add? Now, I remember back in my day, and let me just make this point. Fights are not synonymous with one school or the other. In fact, all schools have fights, including the girls' schools. Let's be real. Okay. With some schools, you don't hear about it. I can testify to that. So let's fights with schools are not. It's not synonymous to one type of school. I just want to put that out there. But Mr. James, is there anything else you wish to add, sir?
Kelon, I'm happy that you raised that point because I hear a lot of it. And I say, we big. We're 700 plus.
Yes.
Other people might be 200. So you would see us, you would hear us. And we as GBSS boys, as GBSS, we out there. So you know when everything is happening. If I stump my toe on the compound, I'm sure before I leave, somebody would know that. That's a given. But this is one of the areas where we need some greater collaboration. I've been engaging with the RGPF on this since my entry into the school last year. Now, there's some things that we have to accept. Boy is expected to be on the GBSS compound 7:50. Now, if a boy is in canteen, and I'm going to use the word loitering at 8:15, whose responsibility? And yes, we know parents, but clearly our parents aren't pulling up the way they should in many instances. Whose responsibility is it to say to this young man, hello, you need to be in school, move on to school? I have left the compound on a number of mornings, went down to the court area, a place they call the bake shop, and to get some of my boys, because I need them in school. Once they have entered my gates, as I always say to them, I have a duty of care to exercise for them, and I take that seriously. But there's need for a greater police presence in the canteen area on our mornings to get the children to move. They are loitering. And we cannot get away from that. They're loitering. Some of them are gambling. Some of them are engaging in the use of marijuana. And Kelon, this is another issue that we need to look at, because while as a country and adults, we waver between decriminalization, legalization, nobody is saying, but if you're 18 years or under, you should not and will not be allowed to use marijuana. But we're not hearing that. And there needs to be a conversation that speaks to this issue. If not, the fear of not just our young men and not just GBSS, because what's happening with some of our GBSS boys is what is happening across the spectrum, right? That we need to take charge of. We have GBSS, TAMCC, the Anglican High School, J.W. Fletcher, all of these converging into Antine. That's a lot of young people who are under the influences of Cayman 6 and others and the Trinidad and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So if we are not there to guide and to facilitate the process, hey, you need to move on. You're not supposed to be here. 8:15, every boy should be in school. This is where the police comes in, not to arrest, not to beat up, but coming out of their responsibility to protect and to serve, to get these young people into the school gates and allow us to then do what we have to do, right? And as a society, these are some of the things that we must take seriously. I'm hearing a lot of nonsense, oh, the young people and the young people and the young people. But the young people are doing what we are allowing them to do.
Correct.
Those of us who know better aren't standing up, or some adults want to be friends with their children, and so they're not guiding them accordingly. And that is going to backfire, right? Parents have to be parents. In our day, we knew everything was blows, blows, blows. These days, we don't beat as much, but we counsel, we talk. We understand now that, it's sometimes taking away the telephone, the cell phone, or the games may have a greater impact than some strokes. These things, we have to be creative. But the fact is, parents have their role to perform. The wider society as a community has a role to perform. Our police has a role to perform. The school and even the church has a major role to perform, because the Grenadian church is woefully silent on the same consumption of marijuana by our young people and gambling by our young people. And I keep asking, which school child has the gaming license? There's a whole a plethora of legislation on gambling in Grenada. Which school child holds the gaming license? Which small shopkeeper holds a gaming license? If you don't have it, then the gambling is being conducted in the wrong place. And if that is the case, Kellon, it should not be visible. Too much of what is illegal in Grenada, according to law, is being condoned visibly.
Openly.
And this is leading our young people down the wrong.
I saw it myself in Grenada, and I was saying to myself, but I can't remember doing that. At least when I attended high school in Grenada, we had the public library, and my grandmother would ensure that I was at the public library because she would come to check, because she worked at the post office right across the carnage, and I had to be there, because if I was not there, what they said, it would be a horse of a different color. Right? So
horse of a different color. I cannot, as you mentioned that, late last year I was in Washington. We had a little conversation. Let me tell you,
yes.
One of the things that amazed me when I went to the library.
Yes.
And I recognized that many, huge library, all sections, even for kindergarten children, set up nicely. But here's what, the people who we might call destitute, who will have anywhere to sleep and whatnot, many of them were coming into the library to print their emails and to send messages to their families, because they knew that the facility was available. Computers and Google could never replace a library.
Never.
Right? And as a society, that is developing. As we say, we're developing. So let us look at the first world. When you go to England, you're doing research in Grenada, go to England, go to France, and you go to the libraries and you get information. It says to us that this is an important part of building country, of building society, and of building a generation and generations. So we can't lose sight of that. There are many things we had to do to pull our socks up.
Absolutely. And gentlemen, this can take we can be talking here all day about those issues, but I do want to now give you an opportunity for some closing comments. Of course, past students of the GBSS, both here in the diaspora, those of you who are watching us here in the Washington, D.C., Maryland, Northern Virginia area, this is also a call for you. I don't know that there is a chapter here in the area, but I know that there are a lot of past students of the GBSS, both boys and girls, who are in this area. So certainly we would love for you to participate. So over to you, sir, Mr. Joseph, for some closing comments first, and then we'll go on to Mr. James.
All right, thanks a lot. So we want to let the public know that GBSS is alive, even if it's 140 years. It has survived a lot of difficult times. You spoke of the fire, Ivan, but it speaks to the resilience of us as a school. And we are here to offer the best quality of education to our young men of this nation. It's all encompassing. And in our school song, in classroom, or even in playing field. So the young man is well furnished unto every good work to find his niche in society. So to our parents outside there, if you want a school for your sons, GBSS is the best place for him. I thank God for that experience, and I'm here to pass it on, to my young brothers and even those who would come into the future. So as we say, long live the great GBSS.
Great is the GBSS.
That's correct.
Yes, Mr. James.
Great is the GBSS. And before I make my closing comments, I recognize that one of our contributors was asking if we can get somebody outside of the police. And to that contributor, the construct that we're dealing with, it's better for the police to take on that responsibility. As I said, once the boys get to my gate, once any student gets into the school, the teachers, principal, have a duty of care to exercise with that student. But when they out in the open, in the public sphere, in the public domain, this is where law enforcement need to step up, right? That's very important. Your juvenile system too, we need to look at it. Kelon, you would notice that I'm wearing my GBSS shirt.
Yes, sir.
So this is the crest of the GBSS. Our badge used to be like this, but for the older old boys, this is not a badge I'm wearing. This is an embroidered crest on my shirt. And so we are doing some of these that old boys and old girls, because we have the ladies fit, the ladies cut. So on GBSS Day, on the day of intercall, you're going to a funeral of a GBSS old boy or old girl. You don't have to put on the GBSS jersey, but you can have your official GBS shirt that you can wear like me with your tie or with another tie, and be outfitted that you recognize as alumni of the GBSS. We have long sleeve, we have short sleeve, but we're making them available. And it's very cheap. I mean, something like this should be $200 because it's the GBSS, but we're saying $140 for $140. So it's the 140th anniversary, $140.
I think that's fair.
A nice shirt. That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. And so you get that. I want to encourage our alumni to continue to support our school. If you have money and you could send money, send money. If you have time and you could give time, contribute time. Visit us. Come and see what's happening. Engage with us. When you meet your brothers on the road, speak to them. encourage them. Many of them are coming from homes where they don't have that. Many of them don't have fathers who are active in their lives. So they're looking for some male mentor. That GBSS boy in your community who you look at and you say, boy, what happened to he? He is screaming for some kind of attention and engagement. Engage him, speak with him, follow him through, walk with him through that journey, because this is needed. I encourage you, I encourage us to support the activities. It's for us. It's all about building our school. And I encourage our Grenadian community and the wider community to support schools in general, because leadership in schools now is harder than before. And part of that hardship has to do with the fact that the support structures that we once had, we don't have much of it. So I encourage us to support those of us who are engaged in education. You may not be an educator, but you can do your bit in terms of mentoring, in terms of just chatting with some of these young people to keep them comfortable. And as we always say, great is the GBSS, and we want to see GBSS-ness spread throughout the length and breadth of Grenada, the Caribbean, and the world, because we are world changers.
I noticed none of you gentlemen said, keep up the esprit de corps. Wasn't that an Ashby thing? He said, keep up the esprit de corps. How do I know that as a PVC boy? Come on, guys.
Because of the influence of the GBSS.
Yeah.
Mr. Joseph, I mean, we've done well. A PVC boy is reminding us that we need to keep up the esprit de corps.
There you go.
Talked about.
Certain things go without saying, and also the Buragi spirit. You know that the
Buragi spirit. The Buragi spirit.
Yes, absolutely.
All
absolutely.
GBSS.
Of course, one of my most influential educators in high school was a past student of the GBSS, Mr. Ali Gill. And that's where I found out that term "keep up the esprit de corps" from. It was from him, actually.
There you go.
So that's how I know about it. Yeah. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for appearing on this week's edition of the Bubb Report. And we here at the Bubb Report, we wish the GBS as well, as it celebrates its 140th year of service. It's no easy feat. It's no easy feat having to nurture such a large student population in the context of Grenada. So hats off to you, gentlemen, and the staff at the GBSS, both present and past staff, and for the yeoman service you've given and you continue to give to the national community in Grenada.
All right, thanks for having us.
Definitely.
Yes.
Thank you very much for having us, Doc.
Absolutely. Viewers and listeners, please stand by as we come back for the final segment of this week's edition of the Bubb Report. And that will be a conversation that we had earlier. As I said before, we unfortunately do not have the guest live owing to her schedule. And believe you me when I say that it was a task tracking down the Honorable Emmalin Pierre, owing to her many commitments now that she's the newly minted political leader of the New National Party. But we were able, and she worked to get us that interview in spite of her busy schedule. So we want to thank her for that. Of course, history would record that the Honorable Emmalin Pierre, unlike her predecessor, agreed to appear on the Bubb Report, agreed to sit with us. So in some respects, in the almost 5-year existence of this program, this is the very first time that we've had the leader of the New National Party, that we had to interview the leader of the New National Party on the program. So please stand by for that conversation. Folks, this is the Bubb Report. We'll be right back after this.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797. That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, is a
And viewers and listeners,
family-owned
welcome
funeral
to
home
the
here in Brooklyn.
And viewers and
providing
listeners,
funeral
welcome
services,
to the
but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
And viewers and listeners, welcome to the second segment of the Bubb Report for this week. Now, we are happy to be joined by the newly elected leader of the new National Party, the Honorable Emmalin Pierre, who also serves in the Grenada Parliament as the representative for the St. Andrews Southeast constituency. Mrs. Pierre is not only the first female leader of her party, but the first woman from rural Grenada to lead a major political party in Grenada. Pierre's ascension to the role of political leader bookended a series of public zonal meetings in which her predecessor was alleged to openly vilify her opponent, the Honorable Peter David, who has since resigned as a member of the party. Also, the party established a leadership succession screening committee, which they acknowledge was not in the organization's constitution. Pierre, however, says that the priority for her and the new executive elected during the December 15th convention is to strengthen the foundation of her party by way of a 5-point agenda for the way forward that will focus on the following areas: empowering and expanding party membership, preserving and upholding the party's core values, modernizing organizational structures and systems, ensuring financial stability, fostering unity, and finally, building strategic alliances. We are happy now to be joined by the newly minted political leader of the new National Party, the Honorable Emmalin Pierre. Honorable Pierre, welcome to the Bubb Report. It's been a while, but I appreciate you have been very busy.
It has been a while, and it's my pleasure. I greet you and I say Happy New Year to you, but I also want to say Happy New Year to all of your viewers and your listeners, all your fans who are out there.
Yes.
I want to include in all of the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. I say Happy New Year to everyone.
Yes, absolutely. Now, in the process of preparing for this conversation, I found out that we have something in common. I never knew that we'd have anything in common, but we actually both worked and attended school, at the University of the Grenadian Voice with Leslie Pierre. Tell me more about that.
I say it's a great thing we have in common. I'll say that. And
yes,
I do hope that some member of the family of the late Leslie Pierre is listening. And I want to agree with you. This was indeed an institution, not just a workplace. I've learned so much and I've grown so much and so quickly because of many of the experiences I've had there. So may his soul continue to rest in peace.
Yes, absolutely. Leslie Pierre was, again, my very first employer in Grenada. And I owe him a debt of gratitude. And one of the things that you said was that a lot of what we learn in formal academic institutions, Mr. Pierre trumped a lot of that in so many ways.
And I actually remember, the details, the attention to details, that spirit of excellence. And I think those are two things I walked away with after working with him for about a year. Anyone who works with me know that I have an eye for detail. I pick up little things that sometimes we tend to overlook. And a spirit of excellence, there's no doubt. I think he has helped to shape that within me. And, I owe a debt of gratitude to him and what he has done. And I really wish that every person in Grenada working in the media would have had at least a short 2 weeks with him. Some people had a day with him and they would have learned so much. So I would say 2 weeks, it really was a good ground to start. And I say that with all sincerity. I really wish, he would have had the opportunity to impact more people, because outside of the professional realm in a personal, private capacity, there's just so much to learn. And I think we have not made sufficient use of people like that. You know, maybe back then, if we thought about having him do some sessions that you record, recorded, maybe if there was the Bubb reports, you know, now we could have gone to archives and pull out some, you know, and young journalists. I see we have quite a number of brilliant young people coming forward. It would have been so good to have them listen to the experience and the guidance of somebody like a Leslie Pierre and others who would have gone even before him. You know, it's a pity that today we can just speak about them in a broad sense, but we have not capitalized sufficiently. And it's a lesson for us in so many different ways. Politics is a perfect example. I would say we're doing ourselves a disservice, for example, if we do not capitalize on the experience, the knowledge, the depth of people like Dr. Keith Mitchell. I see him doing now that podcast, and maybe through that, you know, we can document, which I think we need to do. Other former prime ministers, other people who have served as governor generals and other persons, when you think of protocol and all of those things, when you speak about politics and education, political education, you know, we take a lot for granted. And then when people pass on like we're doing now, then we say how great.
Then we reminisce on how great they were and all of that. Absolutely, I agree.
Us, but then they didn't have the opportunity to do it to everybody. And if we have archives, you know, active and producing and you know, there's just so much more we can utilize people in a very positive way.
Yeah, and one of the things, and before we get into you know, the weeds in respect of the other issues, one of the things that that still remains with me in respect of Mr. Pierre was that he always said to us, let us go to the source to ensure that whatever allegation has been made against someone, that we confirm whether or not those are actually accurate or not. And I still stick with that, you know.
No, and those are the fundamentals. That's what I'm saying. Those are the fundamentals. So he would never publish a story without getting both sides of the story. And I think his legacy still lives on for a level of journalism that we probably might just be speaking about for the rest of our lives. But I really believe we probably need to find a way to encourage. And as I said, brilliant persons, well-educated persons are coming into this field. But it's so important, the fundamentals, the foundation. And this is where persons like yourself and others who would have been there and would have gathered the kind of necessary foundation can help through the association that you have. What you call it?
The Media Workers Association of Grenada.
Media Workers Association of Grenada. I believe a lot more could be done through organizations like this to tap into experience, to tap into knowledge on these fundamentals of journalism. So if you ask me, I admire a good story when I see one.
Yes. So that is so good to know. So we have that in common there. Now, Mrs. Pierre, let us segue into the history of the moment as a woman heading the new National Party. And of course, we cannot talk about your role and your current role as the leader of the party without talking about demographically the amount of women who actually served in the new National Party. I think historically, if we look at the history of Grenada, the new National Party has had more women than any other political party in Grenada serving at the level that you're now serving at in terms of leadership.
Yeah, our party has definitely been a trendsetter in that regard. If you look at the composition of our party also, and I think generally political parties in Grenada, generally speaking, you would have far more women involved at the forefront, and I'm talking about grassroots participation here. But when you speak about the leadership level, our party has definitely led the way, not just at the leadership level of the party, but also at the national level. If you look at Parliament, if you compare the statistics, I believe somewhere in 2022, Grenada ranked within the first top 10 in terms of women's representation in Parliament, right? After the last general election, with the NNP out of office, we went down to about number 64. So that in itself is an indication of the level of representation that NNP brings towards the national level. And I want to give some credit here to our political leader, who at that time, and I'm talking 2022, would have placed a lot of emphasis on attracting young women and women in general into leadership role of the party. I give a lot of credit to him, where you have some people who might have a fear of engaging women at high levels. You look at, I mean, I can't count the number of times that I've had to represent not just Dr. Mitchell, but invited myself to speak in different countries where the subject was women in politics, or women in national development roles. And so I feel very strongly that we have done well in that regard. I feel very, very proud. I see my role now as a role that represents the heart of women and women's ability to serve at the highest level in any organization. I don't believe that there's a significant difference, quite honestly, between a woman's ability to lead and that of a man. Honestly, I don't think there is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Grenadian women in general, whether it's in politics, whether it's in sports, in whatever area, you know, has proven that they are just as capable, and sometimes, quite frankly, even more capable than some men.
You said it, not me, right? But you know, it's interesting. It's interesting you said that. And no, on a serious note, I believe men generally feel that way. Men generally feel that way. I couldn't believe it. I went back and I played it over and over when former President of the United States, Barack Obama, made a statement when he said, I don't have the exact quotation, I can find that before we finish, but he literally said, if you in every country around the world put a woman for 2 years, you're going to see significant difference in national development. I found that statement to be very, very informative, one, as to how he felt as a man, but also very impactful in terms of how people generally feel about women in leadership role. That was really outstanding and significant for me. And a man at that level admitting and commenting in such a way, it says a lot about how men see women in leadership.
Absolutely, absolutely. So now that you're in this new role, I suspect, I know that you're busy, given that we have been trying to snag this interview for a while. But how has, and I mean, you're also new in the role as well, but how has it changed you in any way, your ascension to leadership? How has your routine changed? Has that affected time with family? What do you do, for example, for rest, relaxation, and rejuvenation? How does that look now?
So that's a difficult question, and I'll tell you why. Because I'm the type of person I am. I'm always busy, whether this role or another role or other things that I do. So I think it really boils down to the skill of prioritizing, the skill of managing time, because there's never a moment when I don't have something to do. So it's a matter of shifting certain things, delegating certain things, and managing, your time and your resources and all that you do. So a lot of my time between the 15th of December to now was spent in strategic planning. So a lot of long nights. I've had a few nights that went into morning, and that has been the focus. So we're shifting now more 100% into the implementation phase. And so that is actually part of what's consuming my time as well. But also there are a number of wheels that are spinning at the same time. So our parties are actually in the preparatory mode. We've started that as it relates to general elections. In addition to that, we are also strengthening our organizational structure. There are a lot of different things that are happening. And so for me, the way that I do it is to prioritize what do I really need to focus on. And one of the things I consider the hallmark of my leadership is the involvement of people in the process. I feel really good about that, particularly that within those 30-something days, about 40 days thus far, I would have been able to engage persons to form at least 25 committees, working committees. So it tells you that my style of leadership is very inclusive. It's about getting people rallying around a particular cause and a particular purpose. I feel very strongly about leadership in that way.
And that is something that you're pursuing at the academic level as well, I believe, leadership. So I suspect that a lot of what you're doing comes in handy here. But Mrs. Pierre, let us go on to talk about your priority areas that I articulated in the introduction. What inspired those specific, the specific 5-point plans? Was it that you looked at the structure of the party? Did you do a SWOT analysis? Did you consult with the elders of the party? How did you come up with those specific plans that you have articulated?
So quite obviously, and I sense your theoretical knowledge there, if you come up with anything of that nature, there will be a level of consultation. As I said, it was the Christmas holidays, the New Year's holidays, and not a lot of time there. But one of the things that I did prior, to preparation for this role, I never took this lightly. I never took this journey lightly. And so even before convention, I started a brainstorming session, reaching out to different people, consulting with different people, getting feedback from different people, speaking to persons at the constituency level, ordinary people. And I believe I gathered sufficient information to identify, if you say a SWOT analysis for a term that is more professional, I believe I had sufficient information to begin the process of documenting what that strategic plan can look like. And so there are a few persons who volunteered their time over the Christmas holidays, the New Year's holidays, to actually assist with working towards that. And even when you had a first draft, to engage and to consult a few persons to make sure that the alignment was proper. And I feel confident that captures those areas, captured what came out of the data, what came out of the information that would have informed those 5 pillars.
Absolutely. Now, on that 5-point plan, there is about you mentioned expanding membership of the party, preserving and upholding the party's core values. One of the things that stood out to me was modernizing the organizational structures and systems of the party. To me, the New National Party has won several 15-seat victories in Grenada. So I suspect that the party has an efficient mechanism. So how more can you make that mechanism more efficient?
We're obviously the strongest political organization in Grenada, and maybe we competing well in the region as well. Very strong. We have done extremely well. We stand out as a model in many ways, both locally and regionally. So we have done well, and I continue to say that the foundation is extremely strong. We have strong legacy to build upon. And so what you want to do at this point is not to recreate, not to start all over again. Definitely, we have achieved so much as a political organization. It is about how you take this to the next level. How do you build upon this rich legacy and success that has been achieved? So a very simple example when we speak about modernization is that of, let's use membership. So since I would have been appointed as in the role of leadership of this party, now many persons have been reaching out in the diaspora and otherwise. They want to become a member. They want to know how they can pay their dues. They want to know how they can contribute financially. So my inbox, several messages, right? Even when you go on a program, people in the inbox might be commenting as well. And I had one lady said, I want to make a financial contribution now. Is there a link I can use? And I had to say to her, I'm so sorry.
Or a QR code, maybe.
That's the point. And I had to say to her, that's coming very soon. As a matter of fact, Sister Kate Lewis Peters is spearheading the membership committee, and they have actually started that drive. They have started recruitment. They have started expanding our membership base in terms of registration. And so they are already working on the technological side, in terms of how do we improve that. So you should be able to register online. You should be able to be vetted online, making your payments online, making your contributions online, whatever it should be accessible to everyone. So that's just an example. If you look, I'll just give a second example. Traditionally, when you speak about the organizational work, political work, so let's use, for example, the canvassing of the voters list. People are still taking a paper and ticking off with a pencil and scratching off a name with a pencil and then going back to count. You know, I mean, some constituencies are ahead in that regard, but we have to get everyone on board. The technology is there. It's supposed to improve efficiency, and we got to make use of it. When you go to the field, you know, you write the note on a paper, and then when you get home, you can't find the paper. So how do we ensure that we have a system where in real time, I can see that you're speaking to Kellon Bubb in Croshoe, and that Kellon Bubb has an issue with X or Y or Z, you know? So these are the things that we believe would bring a measure of greater efficiency to the organization. And we are going to continue to build upon, as I said, the legacy, the successes, and to increase the efficiency in our operations.
And let us now segue into uniting the party. Of course, in the lead up to the convention that was eventually held, of course, Dr. Mitchell would always say, everyone wants to talk about convention, and I would laugh. And then when he said also, Keith Mitchell, I also laughed. I saw you laugh as well. Right? But let us talk about Dr. Mitchell's posture in the lead up to the convention, especially in respect of your worthy opponent, Mr. Peter David, of course, your former colleague in the party, and of course the subsequent resignation, his subsequent resignation, as well as the resignation of some members of the party. How will that impact party unity going forward? But let us start with Dr. Mitchell's public posture in the lead up to the convention first. Do you have any comments in respect to how he treated with some of those concerns that perhaps he had privately that he ventilated in the way that he did publicly?
So first of all, I would say this, and I'll just use one example. So I heard Brother Peter in one of his addresses making reference to a statement that Dr. Mitchell made. And he did make that statement at the executive, and he referenced a cancer that we have to get rid of. Now, there were several people in the room, and to me, I mean, this is how I interpret this. This could have been anything or any person. As a matter of fact, he never related this to a person. The conversation shortly before that, or on that day, there was a lot of conversation about confidentiality. And it is a fact that we've had a problem in the party leading up to the convention and probably a bit before that, where conversations at the executive would be in the newspaper the next day, in social media the next day. You know, even while a meeting is going on, information is provided to certain individuals who are not even connected to the party in any way, persons who are not supporters of the party. And the issue of confidentiality was raised and flagged as a major issue. Now, Dr. Mitchell's comment, if you ask me how I interpreted that, I believe that he was referring to some of these issues. And which leader would not be concerned? Which person, which ordinary member would not be concerned about those things? And I seriously believe that those were some issues. We have not seen it post-convention, but I have to say this, that it is an issue that needed to be addressed, needed to be gotten rid of, in my opinion. But I don't know that, and I can't say what was in Dr. Mitchell's head when he made the actual statement, but I never viewed it as him referring to a person. Now, Brother Peter interpreted that otherwise, to say that he believed that he was referring to him. And absolutely nothing is wrong with that. I always say that everyone has a right to interpret things in the way they choose to interpret it, to see it how they view it. And I can't fault him for thinking that. I just have to say that I did not think that in terms of the comment that was made. So that's an example of one of the things that was related publicly.
But do you think that Dr. Mitchell's rhetoric perhaps rubbed some members of the party the wrong way, that perhaps created some discord and disunity? They might not have articulated how they felt publicly, but privately they might have articulated those concerns. Do you believe that as an outgoing leader, that perhaps you might want to go out on a high note as opposed to getting in this type of rancor?
Well, I can't speak for Dr. Mitchell. I'll say this. I can't speak for him. I would simply say that every person has their style of how they would function, how they would operate. I've seen many persons say to Dr. Mitchell, for example, you need to deal with these things. These are things that are happening within the party. You need to speak about it. You need to address it, and you need to do so firmly. And there might be persons who feel, maybe you should not say this publicly, or maybe you should not say that publicly. At the end of the day, it's left to the leader to assess the situation, to look at the opportunity and the threats, and to make a decision that the leader feels is in the best interest of the organization. And that's a challenge with leadership. You never have a situation where everyone agrees with what you do, how you do it, when you do it. I'm sure you have that experience. It's just part of leadership. But the leader makes that choice of how you deal with it. There can be consequences, there can be benefits, and so the leader makes that judgment call at the end of the day. So when you listen to Dr. Mitchell's explanation of maybe some of the comments that were made publicly that maybe some persons might have commented on, you listen to his justification and you probably can see his perspective. You listen to another person's view on it, and you can understand their perspective. As I said, at the end of the day, the leader analyzes, assesses, and makes a determination of what is said, what is not said, how he says it. And I believe that's the prerogative of the person speaking. No, I can't manage, you cannot totally manage. No one can totally manage what every leader says on a public platform. But I take your comment, and it would be for every. I've heard persons who are supporters of the National Democratic Congress speak about comments that their leader making public that maybe you should not have said it that way, maybe you should have said something different. It would always be an issue for every leader or any person involved in public dialogue.
So the second part of this now has to do with coalescing and bringing your party together. Of course, I'm sure that you were in receipt of the resignation letter from delegates from the town of St. George. I'm not too sure if you are at liberty to share if there are going to be other resignations from other constituencies. But first and foremost, were you able to speak to some of those disaffected parties, including Mr. David, following the conclusion of the convention? Did you reach out? Did you have an olive branch reach out to perhaps some of the elders like Dr. Bert Brathwaite, Mr. Anthony Bolson, of course, Mr. David, and the delegates from the town of St. George, who felt as if the process going into the convention was not necessarily very fair?
So let me probably, although you didn't ask that question, but let me comment on the issue of fairness. And as I always say, I respect every person's opinion. We could never all be right if we share different views. And so everyone thinks they're right generally, right? I'll share my personal opinion as it relates to the subject of fairness. Everyone is entitled to have their opinion on that. I don't believe that there was anything in the Constitution that was broken as it relates to the selection of delegates, which is the main issue that I hear spoken of in the public domain. So, for example, the Constitution speaks to convention. And if you studied very carefully, I did, right? I studied it very carefully. And there's no one who can point me to a part of the Constitution that says that the constituency branch or the village group is responsible for submitting the names of the delegates, right? So having studied this, there is no part that says that to me. The Constitution, for example, says the delegates that the constituency branch is to submit. So it's 2 or 3 persons in addition to those that were submitted for the general council, right? So it specifies the 5 persons that the branch submits. Now, quite obviously, the writer of the Constitution at the time, if it was meant that the constituency branch was to submit all the delegates, then it would have said so. It would have specified that, right? Now, if we want to imply that maybe it's a good idea, maybe it's a good thought, maybe it's probably demonstrates a greater level of fairness, if they do, then I have no problem with that. But when you say it was unconstitutional, then you would have to take the Constitution and show me where it states that the branch is responsible for selecting all the delegates, right? So in that way, I would say that's the main issue I heard raised as it relates to why some persons felt it was not fair. I don't know if you heard any other besides.
Yeah, right. So outside of that issue, there was also the issue which I raised with the party's general secretary, Mr. Bowler, in an interview in the lead up to the convention, and that has to do with the screening committee that was put in place. In fact, Mr. Bowler acknowledged that that is not even in the Constitution, where the party sort of brokered sort of a list of, well, it should have been 2 people really, but I believe you're the only one that subjected yourself to the interview. I'm not sure Mr. David did, but the idea of having that sort of selection committee, as opposed to allowing the delegates to nominate who they want to nominate on the day of convention to serve in the position that you now hold. So right. That's the other issue about that committee.
Right. So there are 2 key issues, and let us just dissect them. So we already concluded that we cannot say it was not fair or unconstitutional because the delegates were not selected by the constituency branch, because the Constitution does not say that. So let's rule that out, put that in a bucket by itself. The second thing about the committee, right? I wish to put that in another bucket because I also agree that we cannot use that to say it was not fair. And I'll tell you why. Other political parties, and I see that as wisdom, right? Other political parties, as we have done, would have appointed a screening committee for persons who are interested in certain positions on the executive. At no point, this committee had the right to decide who is the persons who are going up for the positions on convention day. Now, if you're serious about your organization and the transition and the way forward, now remember, Dr. Mitchell led this party for some 34 years. Now, if you want to change and bring in a new person, quite obviously somebody somewhere with, some level of thinking would think, hey, we want to make sure that we have the best possible persons going forward for this position. So whether it be that you go out and encourage people to apply, whether it is that you open some kind of opportunity for persons to show interest, to me, that's how I saw the committee. So the committee would have an opportunity to screen the people. Why do you want to lead this party? And the questions to me were very appropriate. Your leadership style, why do you want to lead? Those kind of questions, which I think may even drive somebody to say, well, hey, I'm not ready for this. Maybe I should step back. Maybe I should reconsider certain things when I think about why I want to lead this party, right? So that's the role of the screening committee. All they do is ask 5 questions to every candidate, the very same questions, and then they make recommendations to the executive of the party. So this is where I want to use this point now, which is why I totally, absolutely disagree that it was not fair. Now, the committee makes a recommendation to the party or brings a report to the party based on the interviews that they would have conducted. What is it that the executive would do as its role? The executive receives that report, and of course, persons on the executive would have an opportunity to discuss this. And mind you, this is really not absolutely new in the context that members of the executive in the past would decide that these are the persons, slate of persons that they would support. Because if you're promoting a party that you want to continue to grow, you want to have the ideal, best possible persons leading the organization. Now, the critical thing, and this is where it comes, the executive absolutely was clear at its last meeting before the convention that this is what happened at the screening process. Any person interested, so I can't see how that can be unfair, any person interested in going up for the position of leader of the party can be nominated on the day of convention. The minutes of the last executive meeting of the party would show that. And so for that reason, I had absolutely no issue with the screening committee. I think it's healthy. I think it's progressive. I think it's something that should continue. As a matter of fact, I think it's something that should be documented in the Constitution going forward.
Is that something that you plan to, in respect of putting it into the Constitution?
I think so. Come on, if you want to hand over the Bubb report to somebody now, you're not just going to go out there and say, oh, anybody interested in the Bubb report, you come forward. I'm going to hand over to you. Come on. Let's be real about this. Let's be real about this. The screening committee's role was to encourage application. Unfortunately, they only had 2, right? As a matter of fact, let me just give you an example. I remember when the screening committee reported to the executive, the presenter said this. At the end of the process, we are going to recommend to the executive the 2 strongest candidates out of the process. And I remember the then political leader made the point. He said, why you keep repeating 2? Why not 3? Why not 4? I remember specifically, and I think they probably were speaking just on the knowledge that it was common knowledge at the time that there were only 2 persons expressing publicly their interests. And he said, well, what if other people just decide to apply after this decision is taken? So I honestly cannot agree with any statement that this would have been unfair because they were not making a decision. And furthermore, as I said, only 2 people apply, 1 person subjected to the interview, and the committee and the executive were all in agreement. Any person. So if Brother Peter David came on the day, somebody, whoever it was, could have nominated him, and the race would have been between myself and him based on the executive's position of what should happen on the day of convention.
So what I hear you saying here is that notwithstanding whatever the recommendations were of the committee, that on the day of convention itself, the nomination could have happened from the floor, as is the case for the convention.
Of course,
the minutes for conventions.
Of course, the minutes of the executive would show that, and members who are present at the executive meeting can confirm that.
Okay, so let us talk. Have you had a conversation? And that's before.
Right.
Yes.
The next part of the question, yes, you have right. I missed that. So I have been reaching out to persons who have been part of the party, maybe for different reasons, and some people many years ago, they have not been very active. So I'll just use an example which has nothing to do with a gripe or anything like that. A former trustee of the party who I met when I came into the party not long after that, I guess based on age, based on other factors, based on other things that he got involved in. I've never seen him around the party since then. So this is like 15 years ago or more. I have not seen him. I reached out, invited him to the very first social the executive had, and he showed up. I felt so excited and so good about that. And so I also invited quite a number of persons who probably, if you say, maybe had a gripe or a concern or some issue, maybe over the years, and in organizations that do happen. I reached out to quite a number of them. We've had conversations in some cases we've had a meeting, in other cases a telephone conversation. So I have reached out, even in some cases, the names you mentioned. As it relates to Brother Peter, we had a very cordial conversation, I would call it, at post-convention. I thought he was going to call to congratulate me the next day, but I guess he was busy. So I called him.
Did he congratulate you? Or
right, so that's what I'm saying. I called him 2 days after the convention, and it was a very cordial conversation. In the conversation, he did congratulate me. And I did say to him that I am quite open and willing to work with everyone. And I'm also willing to work along with him. I said that in the conversation. I mean, that's just how I feel, honestly, about every single person who has an interest in Grenada and an interest in the New National Party. He did say to me at the time that he was considering his political future and that he needed to consult, with necessary persons for advice on, where he goes from here. And so I did not feel any animosity, or there wasn't anything that tells me that Brother David and myself are enemies. We had a conversation, we laughed, and at the end of the day, when I saw his resignation, I did publicly say to him my best wishes. I called him, but he didn't answer the phone. I would imagine, I take that, in a positive way, that maybe he was not in a position to answer the phone. And so I did publicly say that I wish him all the best and I thank him for his service to the organization. The New National Party has always been a resilient organization. We've had resignations in the past, and we have been able to continue, as an organization, building and strengthening our foundation, building upon our foundation, and the success that continues to follow this organization. I think that would continue.
What about the resignation of some of the delegates from the town of St. George? How has that impacted the party? And also, have you equally reached out to those delegates as well?
No, so those delegates, I have not reached out to them since then, as I said, just Brother Peter. But if you recall, let's go back to when Brother Peter joined the party, right? I don't know if you remember that.
Correct. In 2014.
So when he joined the party, we went to various constituencies, introduced him, and each time someone joined following him, we made a public statement of it, that these 5 people are joining or these 3 people are joining, so I expect it to be quite, I mean, we're in politics, right? And politics, quite obviously, is a lot to do with people's perception and how they view things. So there was a reason why when he came, I remember one meeting when 5 people were publicly endorsed as inducted as members of the party. And of course, it was obviously to demonstrate that 5 NDC persons came over to NNP. And I would not be surprised that Brother David is going to use the same approach, whether it be persons who came with him or the persons who are close to him. I won't be surprised if he used that method. If he doesn't, then I would probably question, his approach to his politics. So I'm not
his political savvy.
I would advise him otherwise if he didn't do that. Yeah.
Okay. So what I hear you saying here is that those who probably came over with Mr. David are the ones who are part of the list of resignees.
I have not studied exactly who are the persons. So, for example, off my head, I recall looking at the names. I have not studied them at this point, but the names that I knew, for example, the manager of his office, I know that name. For example, one of the persons who came in together with him, I know that name. So I could have identified persons in that way. But as I said, the politics and the way that we think politically, I would not expect him that anybody who came or anybody who is going with him, that he would be silent about it. As you say, the savviness politically, if you want to call it that. I expect that he would make that public for that particular objective, which was the same thing that he did when he was coming in. So I would view it as just a normal expectation.
But you said something interesting at the press conference, and I sort of, while listening to the press conference, I lifted my head and I said, did Mrs. Pierre just say it will not benefit the NDC, his resignation from the NNP. Can you articulate your thinking behind that conclusion?
Well, I actually made the point that I don't think the resignation would negatively impact the NNP as it will the NDC. And I'm surprised you raised your head, because I'm quite sure you heard several times repeatedly a spokesperson of the NDC saying that should Brother Peter be the next political leader of our party, that the expectation is that some 2,000 disgruntled NDC supporters will go with him. I didn't realize there were so many disgruntled NDC supporters, but
That's a gentleman from your constituency, yeah? That's Mr.
Yes, one of the spokespersons of the Democratic Congress. So I'm saying this to say that I'm not the only person who feel that way. There are persons within the National Democratic Congress in very senior roles and positions who also feel that way. But from our own NNP perspective, I feel strongly about what I said, and I think at the end of the day, let's look at it this way. There's an NNP base in the town, right? There's an NDC base in the town. The NDC base currently belongs to Sister Claudette Joseph and the NDC. The NNP base, I strongly believe, belongs to the NNP, right? Quite obviously, there are persons on both sides of the fence that I believe have an allegiance or are sympathetic to Brother Peter David and probably would support Brother Peter David. Is that sufficient to win? I would say I strongly don't believe. So if you pull your sympathizers or your close friends and supporters from the NDC and even from the NNP, even if you do that on both sides, the question is, do you have sufficient persons to have more than any of those two as it relates to the base? And that is the basis. I mean, I won't go into the mathematical explanation as some persons have done it. In simple form, that is how I view this. Can you take away sufficient from the NDC base and the NNP?
And the NNP base in order to...
Yeah, that's what I don't believe that is possible.
Now, Mrs. Pierre, we do see, and of course we have 2 more questions after this. We do see that both Dr. Mitchell and former deputy political leader Gregory Bowen, they still hold 2 very important positions on the national executive of the party. Now, some have suggested that their continued presence, Madam Political Leader, on the party's executive may preclude you from being a truly independent leader who may not be willing to break from the past leadership styles and whose decisions may be influenced by their continued presence in the party. What say you now in the context of the US election? There were those who said that former Vice President Kamala Harris did not break sufficiently from Joe Biden, and that sort of affected her performance in the election. Do you feel as if their continued presence on the executive of the party would somehow have some impact on how you intend to craft your own agenda moving forward?
Quite obviously, no, I don't feel that way. As a matter of fact, I see Brother Bowen's presence, Dr. Mitchell's presence, to be more of an opportunity than a threat, to be more of a positive than a negative. And I believe it boils down to the individual, right? Whether you're in the bank, whether you're a teacher, wherever you are, you would find that there are opportunities as it relates to people with experience, people who have something that they can contribute to the process. And as the leader, right, you have that opportunity to benefit from their presence, to benefit from what they have to offer, to take as much as you can from them. And this is what I intend to do. Now, I had the opportunity to serve in a particular role where everyone else on staff was older than me, right? And so I can't say that the older people on the staff were commanding my leadership and deciding what I do in every single case, and that I was overpowered by them. No. Listen, leadership, I believe, has a lot to do with how you manage situations and how you project yourself as the leader, how you command the situation that you're in, but at the same time, how you make absolute use, full use, and use all of the benefits you can get from those who are surrounding you, those who are around you. So, for example, in the case of Dr. Mitchell, I believe, stands out as a world leader. I'm not just going to limit it to Grenada and the Caribbean in terms of his experience, right? 20-something years as a prime minister, right? Who would not be happy to have access to his experience, access to his advice, access? Will Dr. Mitchell control me? I don't think I would ever be controlled by any individual in that way. And I must give credit, let me say this, I must give credit to Dr. Mitchell for what I consider to have been a very smooth transition. And I cannot say that he has made any efforts to dictate the way things should be done between then and now, and I don't think that's his plan at all. He has had some very open conversations with me, very, very intentional. As a matter of fact, contrary to what is being said, Dr. Mitchell had a conversation with me concerning the position of leader of the opposition. So I don't see somebody who is trying to hold on to power, somebody who is, if you ask me, I think Dr. Mitchell wants to relax a little more. He wants to be of value to his party. I think it would be a critical error to have Dr. Mitchell's experience and his contribution that he can make go to waste without tapping into that. So I see him as a value. I see Brother Bowen of great value as well. And my style of leadership is, I would say, different to Dr. Mitchell's style of leadership. We have different styles of leadership. His style of leadership has worked for him in that time. He has had tremendous success with that, his style of leadership. Everyone is different. And so every person in leadership has to assess their own strengths, their own weaknesses, and tap into all the possible support that they can get from various persons. And I told you, my style of leadership is very much participatory in terms of engaging, inclusiveness, all of that. Dr. Mitchell, I'm a very strategic person. I like the details. Dr. Mitchell is very tactical, very sharp in that regard. And I see our various styles or various attributes to be very complementary. And I don't see it as something that would hinder or affect my own leadership. I feel very strongly about that, very confident. So I consider myself to be somebody who have had some experience in leadership, quite a number of years in leadership, but who knows it all? Who knows it all? That's how I view it.
That's how you see it. But of course, so moving forward, you are saying that you are your own leader in that respect, and that your decisions are not influenced by any sort of coddling by Dr. Mitchell or by Gregory Bowen at all.
And let me emphasize this.
Yes.
Let me emphasize this. I value the experience, the worth, and the strength of Dr. Mitchell, Gregory Bowen, Clarice Modeste, all of these people who have served in some very crucial times in our country. I do not subscribe to the view of many people who do not even support our party, because most of the people who make very strong statements, I listen to them. I understand their views, and I also understand in some cases where those views are coming from, right? I understand, right? So for me, the way that I view this, a wise leader tap into all available resources, take advantage of all the opportunities available to provide the best possible leadership that they can. At the same time, that leader has to lead with the compassion and the confidence and the strength that is necessary to lead. And I believe, if you ask me, I have that.
Okay. Now, Mrs. Pierre, this is, of course, a conversation about the new national party and its transition and your current role. But of course, one has to view the opposition also as a government in waiting. That is the point of opposition. Yes. And so I believe part of the mandate in the last election, of course, was having an opposition in parliament in whatever form. But as you are the government in waiting, can we talk about the current administration's priorities for 2025, and of course your role as an opposition in providing a viable alternative to those policies that are currently being implemented? So of course we have the pension reform that was just passed. The pension bill, I wouldn't call it reform, it's just one piece of legislation that was passed in Parliament last year. Of course, you have the continued bail recovery. I see that you were recently in Carriacou. Of course, we know about the supplementary estimates, supplementary budget, really, that was passed last year. You also have, continued CBI revenues. Of course, road infrastructure is a major issue. In 2025, would we be seeing, in the context of the opposition, outside of course, the public relations that you do by way of the Talking Points program, as well as by way of press conferences and your social media postings, what will we be seeing in terms of comparing and contrasting policies that are currently being implemented versus how you as an opposition will do it better? I know that in the context of some opposition parties in Grenada and in the Caribbean, you have shadow cabinet ministers for different things. Would we be seeing that as part of your strategies in carving that contrast between yourselves and the current administration?
Right. So what I would say, first of all, is that part of what we are doing now is a review of certain policies, certain even initiatives that we rolled out as a government some years ago, the conversation surrounding that. So how do we begin a conversation of how can we do better the great things that we did? So the great things we did, how can we make them greater, right? But also conversations surrounding what is currently happening, right? So when you speak about the issues, whether it's unemployment, whether it's the issue of the economy, whether it's health, as you say, the deplorable situation surrounding that, whether it has to do with infrastructure, delay in projects, the continued cost overruns in projects, and the terrible conditions of our roads. These are just some of the major issues affecting people, right? So I almost said an administration, but as an opposition and a government in waiting, what you can expect is that we are going to continue to advocate for the people, not just in our role in opposition, but what I've noticed is that several times when people raise those issues, I'm not sure if it's that the government is not aware or they wait on people to raise certain issues, and then you start seeing some actions. So I was very pleased with the heightened actions in Carriacou after the press conference, right? I was very pleased, right? And so we have a responsibility to bring those issues to the fore. We are going to continue to do that. To represent the views of our people. There are so many people who, unfortunately, they feel that speaking, expressing their views, they would be victimized, and we are there for you. We are prepared to express on your behalf. And these are people, mind you, under an NNP administration, they were very vocal, very vocal. And so it's unfortunate that we're at a point where people's constitutional rights are actually threatened. So we are going to represent the views of people. We are going to speak on their behalf. We are going to ensure that we provide policy alternatives, right? We are going to point out the areas of weaknesses, not just because we want to point them out, because we want the government to do better. Because if the government does better, all of us are going to benefit, right? And so as an opposition, we are going to play our role. But most importantly, for me, is our preparation for governance. We've taken a policy position that we are not waiting to get into office to decide on the strategic approach forward for every ministry in government. So when you walk in there, it is about action. It is about delivering on those things that you promise in a campaign. And one of the ways we're very different to the current administration is that we promise realistically, right? They promise based on what people would like to see that is even unreasonable and impossible in some cases. So that preparatory work is what is happening right now and would intensify as we continue. But we are preparing, and we are preparing for governance in the strongest possible way that you can consider.
You've started identifying. I noticed you said at the beginning you're preparing for election. Again, I raised my head because the Prime Minister said he's not, I don't know what prompted him to say that, but he volunteered to put that in the Parliament.
That's the point. You probably should get into politics, because if
no,
the fact that you identify that and you raise your eyebrow tells me that you have a little political blood in you, because a politician would take serious note of that statement. No one does that. Who says when election will not be? So that was a very interesting hint there. And for us, we're not taking that statement lightly.
So have you already started to identify who your potential caretakers are going to be for the various constituencies? And is one Mr. Jonathan McCret on that list?
Did I laugh like this since we started?
Yes. Or no comment. I would not encourage you to say no comment. But
two things about this. Yes, we are putting together 2 slates of candidates. One slate would be what I call our emergency slate of candidates, meaning should the Prime Minister decide to call an election between now and March, we have a team of persons that we believe can go forward to contest the next election. So we are going to be very strategic in our approach. And of course, we have what we would call the ideal slate that we continue to build should the election be called when it is constitutionally
due.
Right. As to Brother Lacret, I question why you singled out Brother Lacret, but there are quite
because there is now a vacancy in the town of St. George, and he's right in the neighborhood in Dr. Mitchell's constituency.
I note your strong recommendation of Brother Lacret, and
it's not.
just to say that we are considering all possible persons. We have not closed off on anything at this point. Interesting, I have not seen this. For the entire period that I've been in this party, the number of persons messaging, wanting to be a member of the party, wanting to get involved, a lot of persons who are messaging, who are public officers, for example, persons who hold certain jobs, who want to know what can they do in the background, how can they help in the background, because they are not interested in NNP, but they're interested in Grenada. In addition to that, what is also interesting, the number of persons expressing interest in being a candidate for the party. Brother Lacret has not expressed such interest as far as I'm aware, but every person who has expressed an interest, we are taking note of that. Of course, there's only one person can represent a constituency. In one constituency, there are 6 people, literally 6 people expressing interest, very strong interest in being candidates. So any person having an interest in any one of the seats, I cannot say to that person that they will be. There's a process, and that process is also scientific in nature. There's a combination that includes a scientific assessment in determining who that final person would be. But of course, we would not rule out anyone in terms of exploring their interest in being a candidate.
What about the town of St. George? Is there going to be, can you share who would potentially fill the role of the caretaker for that constituency now that Mr. David has vacated his role as the NNP caretaker there? Although he's still a member of parliament, but yes.
And I looked at your face, and I know you don't expect me to give you a name today, but what I can say is that there are about 3 persons that we are seriously looking at as possible persons. We have not had conclusive conversations with those persons, In one case, two of the cases, persons who have expressed interest. But as I said, we are going to take a very scientific approach to the finalizing of candidates. We are also going to ensure that in doing so, we take the best person and we don't allow emotions or relationships to determine who that final person is. And I'm confident that when we announce the person for the Tongue of St. George, that you would be quite pleased with our selection.
Okay. And Mrs. Speck, finally, now in 2022, on the heels of the victory of the polls in June, the National Democratic Congress administration launched an investigation into the community-based nonprofit faith organization for People's Development Corporation. Now, some have linked that organization to you. The allegation is the state provided just over $1.1 million in government subvention to the organization. Now, have you heard anything about that investigation since the announcement was made? In fact, they said that they were going to be making recommendations to the DPP, the Office of the DPP. And have you been contacted by the Office of the DPP with respect to cooperating in any way concerning this matter?
No, I have not. I have not been. And I said it before. Well, as a matter of fact, I wouldn't go into details in this interview on this matter. The fact that the organization has taken the government to court and this matter is currently in court.
Yes.
But I've said it before and I'll continue to say it. I'll say it one more time. This matter in question as it relates to this organization, I've provided all possible support that I could have offered to this organization as it relates to community work that they've done in my constituency, whether the CVQ training of people, whether it be community initiatives that they've done, absolutely, as I do for every organization that contacts me and want to work together with me. So yes, as it relates to community development projects, and I commend them for the serious work that they've done. As a matter of fact, when USAID came to Grenada to present certificate to outstanding organizations that completed projects on their behalf, one of the organizations that Minister for Social Development presented a certificate for was that said organization that you referred to. So more specifically to your question, no, I have not received any call from the DPP's office. And if you ask me, I know myself best. I have not personally benefited in any way from this organization. Mm-hmm. And it's an organization I would continue to support in any way because of the contributions that they've made to community. And I encourage them to continue to do all that they've been doing before as it relates to community development. I would appeal to the government to provide back the community center in Telescope, that they can continue the computer training programs, they can continue the garment production courses that they were offering there, that they could continue the after-school program that they were running in that community, and various other projects that they were doing there. I think it would be a great idea if the government would return the keys to them, whatever arrangement they choose to make with them as it relates to the management of the facility. I would probably recommend, well, the school is currently at that location, so it would have to be after the school is moved to another location. And maybe on that note, let me also use the opportunity to appeal. I don't understand why, after 2 years in office, the government has not started the construction of the Anglican school in Grenville. When we left office, the number of processes that were left for the start of that project were very minimal. And so I want to appeal to the government, let that school project start, move the students to their home in Grenville, the Anglican school, and allow that organization to continue the work that they started in this community and in the constituency in general. So that would be my comment on that particular matter.
Absolutely. Honorable Pierre, any final comments, any closing thoughts before we conclude today's very, very extensive conversation? Yes.
Now, closing, I would say I want to wish you all the very best for 2025. For me, I believe that 2025 can be a good year for every single one of us based on our mindset, right? Everything doesn't have to go right. We don't have to have everything that we need for the year to be good. I believe it's always in our mind and how we position ourselves mentally and otherwise. So I want to wish everyone a very happy, productive, prosperous 2025. And just to say that in closing, I am very, very disappointed, very disappointed. And I'm conveying that disappointment also on behalf of so many people that I interact with on a number of areas that this government has failed to deliver on in the last 2.5 years. I want to specify the area of healthcare. We were promised that there would be a significant improvement in healthcare in Grenada. That was a promise. We were promised also that the subject of NHI, National Health Insurance, was going to be given priority. To date, absolutely nothing has happened significantly in that area. We continue to have situations that I believe is deteriorating as it relates to health. So, for example, people are reporting that they're going for basic medication at our health clinics, at our hospitals, and they cannot access those. The road condition, I'm not sure what's happening there, but it's the worst that I've seen our roads in recent times. And I just hope that in the upcoming budget, that the government is going to do something. I don't know what kind of concession they can give, but I believe every vehicle owner in Grenada should be given some concession in the upcoming budget. If you think about and you ask, as a matter of fact, if you communicate with the average vehicle owner in Grenada, they would tell you the wear and tear and how they are impacted negatively by the situation as it relates to our roads. As I said, not just the condition of the roads, but you look at cost overrun, it raises a red flag. What is happening? Why is there so much cost overruns? We've never seen or heard of this in the past, never. The magnitude of those overruns on very basic projects, simple projects, something is fundamentally wrong somewhere. The issue of unemployment and youth unemployment, young people's engagement, the promises made 2.5 years, I'm saying we are extremely concerned. Is it that the government is waiting for a pre-election budget to begin to roll out all of these promises? What is it? There's a serious gap and a serious concern as it relates to the activities of this government, as it relates to delivering on basic promises that have been made. Cost of living, one of the major issues, the cost of food, the cost of medication. You look at the index and how that is consistently indicating an increase in those areas. People throughout this country are under significant pressure. And I want to appeal to this government to relieve people of the kind of pressures they've been experiencing for the last 2.5 years and to do something. We've been waiting for the budget. We're told it's possibly going to be in March. Well, I mean, I could only hope that there's something that's going to make up for what people have suffered for the last 2.5 years. And mind you, that suffering has not been everybody. There are people who have benefited significantly, albeit very small numbers, and persons of a certain class and a certain association. And we are appealing to government to make things better for Grenadians across the board. Carriacou and Petit Martinique, as I've shared, and let me just specify this. Now, I thank the Trinidad organization, don't remember the name right now, for the contribution that they've made, the houses that were delivered by this organization, an NGO. And I made the point, which I want to repeat here, that since then, the government would have had these houses that is called the Build Back Better houses under construction. Not one, contrary to what we were told before, not one was handed over up to the time that I was in Carriacou. And we are saying people are waiting Could you speed up this process? Could you move faster to bring relief to the people of Carriacou and Petit Martinique? And that's just one of the areas, housing. There are so many more areas that we are calling on this government. Do something, move faster, give it priority, stay on island, push a little harder, do something. But there are too many issues where people are affected negatively, and we are appealing to government to do all that you can to bring relief.
I believe that is the Hands That Serve. I believe that's the name of the organization. Hands That Serve.
And I want to place on record again, tremendous appreciation on behalf of everyone who would have received and those who are happy that they receive. I want to place on record appreciation because this was a very timely gift. And I believe that every person who received is appreciative, and I want to place on record thank you. And I ask the government, as it relates to the government's initiative, let us put some pep in the steps and move a bit faster.
Especially in terms of implementation. That was a big part of their campaign, implementation rates and all of that. Yes.
Of course. And that was the genesis. I'm happy you raised this because that was actually the justification that we received for creating a new ministry, MIT. That was the reason. So the government highlighted in 2022 all of the projects that were in the pipeline and they were moving just too slow, and justified that MIT was going to be created as a response to this, to speed up. And we even got timelines. I await to hear where we are with those projects.
Absolutely, and we will continue to watch that space as well. Honorable Emmalin Pierre, Member of Parliament for St. Andrews Southeast, thank you for appearing on the Bubb Report this week.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And again, I want to say best wishes to all of your viewers.
Absolutely. Viewers and listeners, the Honorable Emmalin Pierre, the newly minted political leader of the new National Party, she joined it, of course. This was a pre-recorded conversation because, of course, we want to respect Mrs. Pierre's time, and we know that Sunday is a very important day for her. So we want to thank her for the very extensive and wide-ranging conversation that she had with us. So viewers and listeners, we'll take our final break and come back to wrap up this week's edition of the Bubb Report. Stand by. Hi, everyone. Thanks for checking out the Bubb Report's social media pages. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch our weekly live show, follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch repeat episodes on Wednesdays at 4 and 5 p.m. respectively on CRFM Radio and GBN TV in Grenada. We are also viewed on Sundays at 8 p.m. on WPG10 throughout the Caribbean. Thanks for watching. Viewers and listeners, this has been yet another edition of the Bubb Report. We're happy that you can join us this week. And if your friends and your families and those in your contact list did not have an opportunity to see this week's edition of the program, please do us a favor by liking and sharing the program. Of course, I'm your humble host, Dr. Kellan Bubb. On behalf of the producers of the program, I say thank you for tuning in for yet another installment of the Bubb Report. Take care. Bye-bye.